the focus this morning, like we said, on Kotak Mahindra Bank. So fascinating story. And just a few more insights on their numbers, etc., from Vishwanath Nair, who joins us now in the studios. Vishy, good morning. So now, I was looking at the clutch of notes on Kotak Mahindra Bank, and one line that stood out was stellar results, but if only results would be enough. So we spoke a bit about the numbers, and we'll have our analyst on as well. The numbers have been good, but what about the rest? Now, the concerns with that bank range from regulatory action to what's happening in the top management, etc. What was the sense that you got listening to Mr. Ashok Vaswani?
Right. Good morning, Tamanna. So, this press conference that happened on Saturday was originally supposed to be a Zoom call. But then they suddenly midway changed it to a live press conference. The first one that Ashok Vaswani has had since he took over on the 1st of January. What a time to come in front of reporters. But essentially what he was pointing at is that they're taking the RBI's embargo on credit cards as well as new customers very, very seriously. And that their first and top priority is to come back to business as usual. Because once you reach that level is when you start showing some amount of growth. That's what the new CEO would like to sort of flex in front of the shareholders as well as people who are watching the bank quite closely. He's spoken about the fact that Kotak Mahindra Bank has had a long period over the last 2 odd years in terms of upgrading their technology as well as the tech infra that they have at the bank. They were in the process of completing that, but before that, the RBI came in with these restrictions. So it is likely that it won't take as long as it took some of the other players to fix things and bring things back to order. Remember that this whole thing...
One second. It's likely it won't take as long as whose assessment? Mr. Vaswani himself?
Mr. Vaswani himself. He believes that it should take about 2 or 3 months before they can go back to the RBI and say, listen, we have fixed whatever you asked us to fix. So why don't you take a review? They still need to appoint an external auditor, who will come and review everything and submit their report. And on the basis of that report, the RBI would decide whether those restrictions need to be removed or not. This whole process is interesting because Kotak Mahindra Bank has been spending on IT to the tune of about 10% of the OPEX, which is higher than what a lot of other banks in the ecosystem are currently doing. This year, this quarter, for example, as of FY24, the total expenses were about 17,000 odd crore. 10% of that 1,700 crore roughly they've already spent. And they are likely to keep pushing at that and maybe reprioritize more expenses towards improving the technology infrastructure. So it's likely that the 10% may go up a little bit in FY25 because that is the year that they need to really turn it around. But the RBI in its, the statement that it put out was very, very harsh on Kotak Mahindra Bank, said that we have repeatedly been asking them to fix these issues, but they have not adhered to whatever the RBI has asked them to do. The bank says, well, Mr. Vaswani goes out and says that maybe our efforts fell short, but we will try our level best to ensure that the regulator is satisfied at the end of it all.
And, let's just listen in to a comment from Mr. Vaswani from that press conference as well.
The management team and I are exceedingly clear that our first priority, our first and top priority is to get Kotak back to business as usual. And while we are doing this and in this period, while we are building everything that it takes to get Kotak back to business as usual, getting ready to come back roaring when we get the permission to do so from our regulators.
Now, so that's on the RBI regulatory action bit of it, but that's not all that has been haunting Kotak Mahindra Bank for the last couple of weeks, I would say, Vishy. The other one is the exit of Mr. Manian. Yeah. Now, on news of that exit, a Federal Bank went up. Now, it's not clear if Federal Bank is hiring him or who is hiring him and what happened there. You got a lot of inside details on the story as well. Do share.
Yeah, so interestingly, Mr. Vaswani did not have to go there, but he did. And he said that, listen, as far as I'm concerned, or as far as I know, Mr. Manian does not have an offer in hand. Now, that was a completely unnecessary sort of segue from the press conference, but he did make that comment. And it's interesting because 6 days since the RBI announced the embargo, the second in command of the bank turns in his resignation. This resignation is discussed in a 30-minute board meeting. And then with immediate effect, he's asked to leave the bank. So that was something that was interesting, and that's something that we asked Mr. Vaswani, and his point was that...
So he was asked to leave with immediate effect?
Yeah, I mean, in the sense, the letter signed by Mr. Vaswani, which went up on the exchanges, says that accepted with immediate effect. That was something that it was part of a signature. And when we asked him why that happened, his point was that Manian had aspirations and he wanted to go into the financial services space. That made things a little bit uncomfortable because the bank is going through a period of transformation, so you don't want somebody who's leaving the bank at that crucial juncture. And maybe that's why Mr. Manian was relieved with immediate effect. But it's interesting because the second in command of a bank leaving after a 30-minute board meeting is pretty much unheard of at this point in time. So that was the interesting bit in that. Now, whether he goes to Federal Bank or not, Mr. Manian, is something that will be decided by the end of this month, because that's when Federal Bank is going to send the list to the RBI, and the RBI has to approve whether it's an external candidate, supposedly Mr. Manian, or internal candidates, which is Harsh Duggar as well as Shalini Warrior, who are EDs at Federal Bank, whether they succeed Shyam Srinivasan. That's something that we need to watch out for, but that will be clearer in the last week of May.